Here's a question. What are the chances of getting struck by lightning? The answer? 1 in 500,000. And that's the same chance a child has of being diagnosed with a rare, incurable disease called juvenile myositis. For this week's Exceptional Woman, the journey between watching her little boy go from a running, climbing, laughing, curious little boy to a child who couldn't sit up or lift his head without pain, the last few years have been devastating. But through it all, there has been determination, hope, and lots of love. This is the story of a mom named Liz Ryan. Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Something very powerful happens when we tell our stories because we end up teaching each other something, and that's what I'm hoping is going to happen today because you are here to tell this story. So take us back to the day when you and your husband Luke started seeing some physical changes in Liam. How old was he and what did you see?
So starting January 2018, Liam had your normal kind of cold flu type of illness. This is around the holidays, it's cold, winter, very typical. But after that, it must have triggered the autoimmune because he started really like a muscle atrophy type of disease. And week by week, it just got worse and worse. So in the beginning of January, you kind of saw this very odd rash. It's this butterfly rash on your face. And what's very characteristic are these odd kind of warts on your knuckles and your cuticles and elbows and his toes and knees. So we saw this rash developing, and the little kids, they just have red cheeks, so you couldn't really figure out, but I kept on putting a ton of Aquaphor and everything else you could do. And then he just started sitting out of activities. He didn't want to participate and run around with his friends. He would sit down and ask his friends to come sit with him, and they wanted to just be little kids and run around, age 4 in preschool. It really broke my heart, and the preschool teachers were amazing. They were with him from 7:30 to 5:30 since he was a little kid, and we kept in great communication. So
they were noticing things too in preschool.
They were noticing him in preschool, and we finally determined it's really not him acting out. I also have a daughter who's younger. She turns 3 in October. So we're trying to determine, is it something with jealousy? But she was already older, so we already passed that stage. So I took him to the pediatrician, and our pediatrician office happens to have like 16 of them. So they said, okay, we'll just go to the local dermatologist. So we go to someone in town. They said, oh, we'll just put steroids on his face. And I did it. I put it on there, and I was like, yeah, but you know what? I got neurotic because he ran a fever every single day for like 30 days at that point. And I said, you know what? He has a fever every day. That's not normal. He's very lethargic. He's sitting out. He can't get off the floor. I remember he was on the floor of the dermatology office. He was so exhausted. And I would have to wheel him around or carry him around. So the dermatologist said, oh, he's probably sick. And I went back to the pediatrician's office at least 3 or 4 times just to see different people. And after a while, they're also convincing me, like, well, go see a psychologist. And they were running tons of blood work. So every time you go, you hated going, blood work. And they're like, well, maybe he's a little anemic. So I call it, we went through the ologies. So first we went through hematology, big workup, big specialists, all at Children's. Nope, not that. And they're like, well, maybe you should go check out neurology. So all of that. And at that time, I still had already made appointments for dermatology, but it was still 3 months out. So I wasn't going to see them until March. So we're going through, and then I talked to a bunch of psychologists, and they're like, no, you go back to the pediatrician. The fevers, that's not typical. Getting off the floor. So he wouldn't get off the floor, couldn't sit up, couldn't get up the steps. And there was times where, like my husband and I would fight. He's sitting at the bottom of the steps. We're telling him, no, it's all in your head. It's not in his head. We're all crying. We're all yelling. I remember just one night, it was like 10:30 at night. I just scooped him up, picked him up, and just brought him to bed. It was tough. It was
Wow.
really tough.
You are describing, I bet there are moms who are listening to the show right now saying, oh my God, this sounds like the worst situation possible, because I'm going to guess the mother instinct is going off in your brain going, something is wrong with my baby.
Something is wrong. The hard thing, so, when you become a new mom, everyone's like, oh, you gotta listen to your gut. And you hear these things, you're like, yeah, okay, I gotta listen to my gut. But what they don't, you need to say one more step. You need to listen to your gut while everyone else is telling you you're wrong, So it's a little more than just if you're in an incubator and it's just you saying, okay, I need to listen to my intuition, that's one thing. Listen to your intuition when everyone's telling you no is hard.
How long was it between when the symptoms began and the diagnosis was finally given?
March 26th, so 3 months, full 3 months.
And tell me about the day you found out what he had.
So we finally got really close to, after we exhausted different ologies.
All the ologies, right?
We knew it had to be a rheumatology kind of thing because it was muscles. And there was one dermatologist at Children's and said, no, I think it's this juvenile myositis. Let's get you into rheumatology. But it was impossible to get. This guy walked into rheumatology. We couldn't get the appointment. I was calling every single day to get the appointment. I got the pediatricians to call for me. We had other doctors at Children's trying to get us in. And it's really hard. We're at Children's now. We ended up at Tufts Floating Children's. I couldn't get in. I got very frustrated and I said, we're in Boston. I'm going to call every hospital. So I knew of Floating Children's because my husband's cousin had delivered her twins there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing. So I said, okay, we're in Boston. Every hospital's probably good. So I leave a very desperate message for the receptionist on a message machine. I need to get in. She calls me back on a Friday afternoon, gets me in on Monday at 1 o'clock, and I'm like, okay, good. So I work in a great company that has a downtown Boston office and then an office close to my house. And I bring Liam in that morning in Boston. He loves coming in the office. He's very accustomed to it. He sees everybody. Everyone loves him. He has screen time, unlimited snacks, and he's sitting across from me at the desk. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning. We have our appointment at 1. I assumed we would be there all day, all morning, have lunch, go over. And he starts coughing up, saying, dry heaving and saying, Mommy, I have blood in my throat, crying. So I run over there and I have this garbage can, kind of just processing really quick what to do. And he's screaming, take me to the doctor. And he hates doctors at this point because every time he goes, they draw blood. And I was like, I know, that's it. We got to get an ambulance now. So I pick him up and I go into my boss's office. I was like, call 911. We're going. So my coworker, my boss, pack me into the ambulance and they say, do you want to go to Floating Children's or do you want to go to Boston Children's? And I called Luke, my husband, somewhere in between there, and I said, you know what, I got to be at a really important appointment at 1 o'clock that day. They're like, well, then go to Floating because you'll have to get another ambulance to bring you there. I said, all right, let's go. We get there. Liam loves it. He thinks the hydraulics are great in the ambulance. We're on our way over, and we get in the ER, and I remember being like, I was yelling at the doctor. I'm like, you're not dismissing us. You're gonna look. And he's like, no, we're gonna help you. I just think you should see the specialist. We can't do anything for you in the ER. So at that point, it's about 1 o'clock. We get up there. Within 10 minutes, they're like, we know what you have. You have juvenile myositis or dermatomyositis because he has the skin disease part with the muscle. We didn't leave for a week.
Not knowing can drive you crazy. You want an answer, then you don't want an answer.
Exactly.
And especially to hear that your son has an incurable, potentially deadly disease.
Yeah.
Tell me about that day.
So we kind of knew a little bit of what it was because of the previous dermatologist. Also, we Googled it, right? So that previous day before, Luke and I cried. We actually reached out, and this is the amazing thing now with social. You know, we reached out to the only organization that supports families, that raises money for research for juvenile myositis. And I connected with one of the kind of lead moms who happens to be an employee. And she ran it through, but you know, you're kind of in a fog. I remember talking to her in CVS before my appointment, like trying to buy everything that I could buy for this potential appointment. But when we get there, it's like we've forgotten everything, right? I couldn't even pronounce the word. And I remember they're like, okay, Liam has juvenile dermatomyositis, you're not leaving. And we're like, we're in our work clothes, Luke's in a suit, I'm in a dress, I'm like, we're not leaving. My sister happens to live downtown, so it was really great. She came over with her husband, my mom came up from New Jersey, but I just remember there's this picture, Luke our cars are somewhere in the city, so he's like trying to get the cars, going home to get our bags, packing them. He brings like 6 bags for us to stay for the week.
Well, I hate to just give you just a little bit of humor here, but never let your husband pack a bag because God only knows what's going to be in there. I've been down this road before.
Yeah, I was like, why would I need this?
Why would I need this?
Yeah, but I have a picture of him just in his little pajamas that he never took off that day, and the IV and him sleeping, and just being like, oh my God.
How am I going to get through this?
Yeah.
What is his treatment plan now?
So now we've come a long way. He does have IVIG, which is plasma infusions, every 2 weeks. So we're at Children's in Waltham, and it's an IV. We get there at 11, we leave about 7-ish. So it's all day, and every week at home on Sunday nights we do low-dose chemo, methotrexate, and now he's on 1 milligram of prednisone.
How is he doing? If you could just give us a snapshot. We'll show some pictures as part of the show today, but how is he doing now?
In terms of his physical activity, amazing. He does fatigue a little sooner than other kids. He'll need naps and breaks, but he's running around, he's jumping, he's happy, he can participate. I think mentally though, it really has taken a toll on him. Right now he's in this phase where he will not wear shorts or any short sleeve shirts. He says wearing shorts reminds him of the chemo shot he has to take, and he's really scared of the sun. The sun is a big trigger for the disease, so if he gets like a sunburn, it could induce a flare, and then we got to start all the medicine up again. And we've come a long way to, I know every 2 weeks sounds like a lot, but before it was worse, so we don't want to do that. So it's a very tricky disease. You can see kids for a long time on medications.
Does Liam understand does he understand that he has a serious life-threatening illness? Does he get it? Because he's so young, and you want to make him be cautious and careful, but you don't want to corral his energy and his spirit. That must be so hard, Liz.
So there was one time he heard, fortunately, there's a lot of great opportunities have come up. There's another nonprofit called Team Impact, and they match each kid up with a college sports team. So he had he did a signing for the Bentley Falcons, the football team. Loved it, loves the guys there. But on the news clip it says it's a deadly disease. So he's like, Mommy, so does that mean kids die from it? And I had to say, well, kids can die from it, but we're doing everything we can to make sure you're not one of them. But I had to say, because it was just a mommy thing, I'm like, it's not you though. But like, how can you say it? They're 5. Like,
I know all about Team Impact and Jay Calvin and Associates, and what a great organization that company is, and what Jay is doing for children all across the country. You've just launched a website which is called CureJM4, the letter 4, Liam, Liam.com. What has been the reaction to your website? You've just launched.
Everyone has given us great comments, written in. I feel like we needed a hub to really put everything in one place. We've been doing a lot outreach. My husband and I are just a little more of an extrovert kind of family, and we're both sharers by nature. So we've done a lot of different, thank you so much for having me in for this interview, we've done a lot of different type of media outreach. So it's nice to be able to connect with our community and keep them posted. We have a huge fundraiser on August 12th in Burlington, so this is a way to make sure people always come and support.
I know that this is a rare disease, but I'm going to guess that you, in launching the site and in reaching out, have heard also from families who felt like they were isolated as well.
Yes, so the amazing thing, so last year was our event for Bold to Cure JM, and there was a mom that came. She was from like Andover or some local close town, and she came up and she gave me a hug and she said, I just want you to know it gets better. I have a son that plays D1 lacrosse, and he has this disease, and there was no outreach, there was no community back then. Thank you so much for putting this up. And we actually did. That newscast attracted a bunch of families that they were just older kids in college or after, and they said, thank you so much for having this, and it was so nice to meet them.
I'm going to guess that as your son grows older, it'll be even more important for him to see those kids as role models for him as well.
Yes, absolutely.
There are such limited resources for families with children who have JM, and you want to change this through your website.
Yes. So not only do we want to create awareness for families and a place for us to collaborate, we really want every dermatologist, every pediatrician to know exactly what this is. So they don't have to go through, 3 months is a long time, but there's people that have went through years trying to find this diagnosis. And the only way to really beat this disease is to catch it early. So I hope, knock on wood, we caught it early enough. We won't know. There's not enough research out there to know. But that's our true mission. Everyone needs to know about it, so the next kid that gets diagnosed gets caught early.
Boston is a medical hub, not just for the United States, but for people all around the world. Yet it took a while to get Liam diagnosed. And you have said earlier, well, that's because we had to go down all the ology corridors in order to come to find our answer. So what have you learned from all of that?
You have to listen to your own intuition. So number 5, life lesson. And no one tells you how hard it is to listen to your own intuition when there's a lot of other quote unquote professionals, people that have been doing a lot more things longer than you have, are around you, surrounding you, giving you their opinion. So it's certainly a life process and life learning, I'm sure I will have, but my advice to anyone is you really have to listen to yourself.
Listen to that voice inside your head that says, that doctor might have a lot of degrees on the wall, but that's not what's going on with my son right now.
Right.
It's one thing when we as adults are sick. It's another when our child is sick. How have you made it through this so far? And what do you do when you hit that wall and you know you need to pick yourself up off the floor? Maybe there's a mom who's listening who has a child with a serious illness and could benefit from your answer.
The nice thing about now is that there are ways to reach out to other people that might be going through the same thing. So my advice is that don't keep yourself in an isolated bubble and reach out for help. And I know people say that to you, and it's hard to do, and it's hard to reach out and express, but I have a great network of not only my immediate family, but I also created my own network of really strong other moms in the community I live in. I'm connected to Lex Fund, which is a great nonprofit, and then through Cure JM, there are a ton of other families that you can post. We have like our own little Facebook group, and they get it, they know it, and they can kind of diagnose things even before doctors, because there's so many of them.
And
there.
even to just say, hey, that's what happened to my child, but here's what we did. Don't panic.
Right.
That kind of thing. What is mother love, Liz Ryan?
Gosh, it's truly putting your children before you, even at your own detriment, though you do need to take care of yourself. That's my love to my children.
You are a very successful businesswoman. You work for TD Ameritrade, and you are able somehow to work and to take care of this child, and you also have a little girl.
Yes.
What is your trick? How have you done it?
It's funny. So, last night I was giving advice to my sister-in-law, an up-and-coming, amazing woman in media, young 20s, and we were just talking about her work-life situation and what she wants to accomplish and the goals that she has out there. And one of my pieces of advice to her was like, why not you? You can be the first one. Just because someone hasn't done it doesn't mean you can't. So at TD, I've been there for 9 years. I was the first, and I think I'm still the first person to ever be part-time. So after Liam, I somehow forged my own role there, and I still help clients and business owners, families with their financial needs. But I was the first one, and I did phenomenally well. I did awesome. And then just as Liam got diagnosed, I got a promotion. Somehow I managed to get the promotion. He got diagnosed, and honestly, they have been so wonderful to me and flexible, and I wouldn't be able to do all that I do for Liam's care without a really great work-life balance and a great company to work for.
Your family is no stranger to heartache and to adversity. You told me when we were chatting a while ago when we first met that your parents are Vietnam refugees.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little about that?
So I was born 20 days after my parents came from Vietnam. They fled in 79. So, everyone's leaving the country. They're kind of on the last, fall of Saigon 75, so they're kind of on the later spectrum. They escaped. My father's family, so they're all in Saigon. My dad's family had a quote-unquote trucking company, which is one truck. Okay. So, the North invade, they take over the family business of one truck. And they say, okay, you are going to now drive the truck for the government. And we're taking all the wealth, and that's kind of how it happens, right? And my father's job at that point was to then drive this truck, and they're now invading into Cambodia. So their job is actually, they're invading to take the wealth out of Cambodia, and the killing fields and everything else. So, of course, my dad needs to make money, and he's always been this rebel at heart. My parents are just super hardworking. They've always worked a couple jobs. They still do. They're still working so hard. And they're trying to make money. So my father's like selling goods and gasoline off the side of the truck. Of course, he knows he's going to get caught eventually. And he brings the money back, but my mom and dad are the oldest, and they have many siblings. And, my mom and dad lived across the street, or at least the family said. So they bring all this money back, and then just goes to the family, and there's nothing left. My dad's like, we can't live like this. We're never gonna have anything. My mom and dad already had my sister. So they said, okay, we're gonna go, we're gonna leave. So it was my dad, my mom, and his uncle, and a couple of his siblings. So, it's like a group of 8. And what they did was they hid in the truck overnight. And my dad's best friend drove them deep into Cambodia to then walk up to Thailand. But in that journey, they were captured by the Khmer Rouge. And they were beaten for 3 days. And my father said to my uncle, who was 15 or 13 at the time, they're all tied, my dad and the men are tied with their hands behind a tree, but my uncle, young guy, on the ground with hands tied. And he said to my uncle, my mom's brother, in the morning, untie me, because you're on the floor, you can come up and untie me, we're gonna kill everybody and get out of here. And my dad said he heard his uncle's voice very clear in his head, don't do anything, wait till the morning. Now at this point, the CIA, the American CIA, are in the jungle looking for POWs. They found my parents, trade them for rice, and now they're in U.S. custody. And they're like, "So, have you seen POWs?" My parents are like, "No, we haven't seen anybody." So they were one of the first to end up in Thailand, and then millions of people came. And then they ended up being transferred to a refugee camp for a couple of years. And so when the Unitarian Church in Summit, New Jersey sponsored us, I was born 20 days after.
How does it feel to tell that story?
It makes me want to record it, which good thing we are, because I want my children to know, and I want to record my parents. And you know, they wanted to come here and make a life, and they wanted to do it quickly. I was born, they gave me an American name, there was no Vietnamese name. They were just like, "We're gonna get it," you know. And you know, they'll even say they were so proud that they were only on like kind of assistance for 8 months. And I mean, they did it.
You know, I hear these stories and they bring tears to my eyes, because when they came to this country, they became the kinds of citizens that we all want everyone to be, because they love this country.
Right.
As do you. What did you learn from your parents? What was the message in your house?
My mother said to me, "If they can do it, you can do it." Always.
When an obstacle is in your path, how do you get around it?
So I do think that seeing my parents work so hard, and I still look up to them thinking that I'm not working hard enough. So when I see them overcome so much, they've been my lifeline. And I also have to say, my grandmother, who's my adopted grandmother, there was a family in the Unitarian Church that really just took us in, and they're my family, and they think the same with us. You know, they grew up Great Depression, everything else. The values they taught us are always within me, and I hope I do the best to teach my children.
What do you wish you knew, Liz, when this journey with Liam first got started? And can you pass that lesson along to a parent who's just starting to walk that same walk?
The one thing, and I do think I might have done this somewhat in my past, is you do need to reach out to multiple specialists or people or opinions, however you want to phrase it. You know, if you kind of work in a bubble, whether that's the stress that gets to you or the opinions of the people around you, it could not be beneficial. So the more you reach out, the more you tell your story, the more you share, the more that comes to you. So as much as hard as it is, you really do. I mean, there are times where I just want to quit my job. I mean, everything. You just kind of want to hide. Don't do that. It will not be beneficial. And you do want to be strong for your children.
Success means different things to different people at different chapters in their lives. What does success mean to you, Liz Ryan, right now, at this moment?
For me, success means balancing it all. And I truly believe that balance only can last a moment, but you can't get frustrated with it. There's going to be very imbalanced times. You just have to remember that's just a moment in time. So for me, it's not reaching that certain, title at work or that certain income or whatever, owning that certain house. It's being able to balance everything that I value and the people I love around me.
I want to say thank you so much for telling your story. We're sending our love and our prayers Liam's way, and thank you so much for being on the story behind her success. Liz Ryan.
Thank you so much.